This conference will now be
Morning, guys.
recorded.
Good morning, everyone. So, related to the exam preparation, right? But before I go there, if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them. Otherwise, I'll get started with the practice exam. By the way, you should find one practice exam in the Udemy course as well, maybe one or two. So you can also follow that as well. I'm just opening a separate one on the Linux Academy.
So I just
All right.
have one question. Right? Like public snapshot. So when I make a snapshot public, is it visible to everyone? Like whosoever is part of that region?
And not that, I mean, it goes to the community marketplace where it will be available in the marketplace to the entire community. So anyone who wants to use your, AMI, they can use it.
Okay, so we can browse that easily in the marketplace.
Yes, it basically gets published in the marketplace.
Okay.
You can even sell on marketplace as well, by the way. All right.
Sandeep.
So yes.
Yeah. Sandeep, my question is that we have seen the infrastructure as a service till now. What if I want platform as a service? For example, I want to deploy my web application on, let's say, on any server. It can be Apache or any kind of web server. So, do we have that option?
We do have that option. I believe there has been topics assigned to every one of you guys with platform as service options, right? So once we basically have covered those topics, you will see those in
Okay.
action as
Fine. Thank you.
well. All right. So anyone else, will you be providing access to Linux Academy portal? Dhruti, I mentioned that Linux Academy portal is available for free when you sign up for the first time for a certain period of days. So whenever you guys are ready, you can basically sign up. And I also told you that Riverside is free in the entire month of April. So use the free account and get signed up so that you guys can actually use them and leverage them for free. Right? Anything else? By the way, practice exams are also available in the Udemy course. It's just that I'm, giving you a separate source of practice exam. That's it, because that's something that you already have access to. So I didn't want to give you the same thing. All right. So going into the practice exam, what I'll do is I'll cover some of the questions in there which are relevant to what we have discussed so far. The first question talks about DynamoDB, which we haven't covered. So I'm going to mark this as a review and go to next question. Right. You have been asked to ensure that Lambda component of AWS deployment is resilient across 3+ AZs. What modifications are required to meet this requirement? See, again, we haven't discussed Lambda, by the way. So something again will, but normally I'll tell you, since Lambda is a managed service, it is fully scalable, right? So in this case, I would have gone with none, right? But again, we haven't discussed Lambda, so I'll not go into any of these options so far. You operate a commercial stock of image websites with millions of images. Watermarked preview images are available via EC2 instance application. Full resolution versions are stored on EBS volumes. The EBS volume is attached to the EC2 instance and delivered by the application. You have been asked to find the cheapest solution that can scale. Which option is more suitable? Okay, I leave for you guys to decide. Come on, guys. At least try and take a guess. The question is not very difficult. We have already discussed this. First of all, you need to replace EBS, right? So to replace EBS, we are looking for a cheaper solution. Plus, we are looking to store images, which is again going to be what? Unstructured data, right? So it needs to be fully sure on EBS but you need a cheaper solution that can scale. Okay, what solution scales automatically? It's obviously S3, right? And so which option is more suitable? So right now, first of all, I will not store it on EBS. Reason because I'm looking for a cheaper and a more scalable solution, and EBS is not scalable beyond one availability zone, so that's obviously out of the question. This seems like an option. C, move images to S3 and enable SFTP support. There is no enable SFTP support that I've ever talked about, so that answer is obviously wrong. Move the images to S3 and use pre-signed URLs, or the other one is give images public access enabled for read permissions, right? Now both of these options seems okay. Now this seems more secure, but that means a lot of effort for images that needs to be public anyways, right? So I would go with move the images to S3 and add read permissions for everyone. I think that's the correct answer, right? So that's how I basically narrow down my approach to see, okay, images needs to be stored. As soon as I saw images, it seems like unstructured data, so I'm thinking about S3. Then it is asking me, okay, I need a solution which is cheaper, which can scale. It is all taking me towards a S3 answer. So I'll basically look for an answer that is related to S3, and as you can see, finally there are two answers which are left, which might be correct. And then I had to look for the solution which suits the requirement the most, the best answer, which seems this one in this case. That's how I arrived at my answer. You've been asked to suggest a more secure way to connect two VPCs, and a solution should be at least amount of additional infrastructure as possible. What should you suggest? So you need to connect two of the AWS VPCs with each other. What solution should you suggest?
VPC peering?
Yes, Karan also says A. That's something we discussed earlier as well, that if you need to connect two AWS VPCs, you need to use peering because that's the least amount of infrastructure that you need to create in your AWS account, right? So that would be the correct answer. You run a single instance of your EC2 instance in AWS. The architecture teams are looking to make changes and convert the application to operate on 18 servers. The app runs on Linux and currently accesses millions flat files data in data folder structure. This data is stored on EBS volume attached to EC2 instance. How can it be moved on multiple? How can it be moved on multiple server with little application changes as possible? What product should you suggest? We'll let you give some time to think about this before I tell you the answer. So you need a single solution where you can, have all the flat files stored in a hierarchical structure, and they can be accessed from one place, right? And of course, elastic MapReduce and HDFS is not something that will be able to do it, right? So that's out of the question. S3 can be used. Sorry?
Is the answer C?
No, that's incorrect. The only one person who has answered the right answer is Karanjot right now. He's answered all three questions right? So, okay, EMR and HDFS obviously out of the question. Use EBS to mount the existing volume to all new instances. You cannot mount an existing volume in read-write fashion to multiple instances. That's absolutely not possible. We even never discussed this as well, right? So S3, yes, you can do this, but then you'll have to make some changes to the application itself so it can directly talk to S3, which is again not possible. You'll have to come up with some staging drive, So I mean, it requires application changes. Ideally, I would have gone with S3, but it clearly says that you do not want to make any application changes, so that's out of the question. So we are basically looking for something which is like a file share, which allows me to share files from a single location, like a NFS, right? And NFS is supported by EFS inside of AWS, as the name suggests, Elastic File System. It's a file system, hierarchical file structure that's there, which you can directly use to adopt and use inside of AWS to solve this particular problem that we have, right? That kind of also, if you haven't heard about uh, yes, 18 Linux servers and no application changes are the two key points which should get to your solution. Like you have 18 different servers which needs one shared drive, one shared location where they can get all of the data. How do you do it in real life? You will probably be using an NFS in real life scenario and on-premise as well, right? And the other one is no application changes. Otherwise, I would have gone with S3 if they wouldn't have specified any application changes, this particular line. So if you look at the question itself, it should become very, very clear what this needs to be used for. Now, EMR stands for Elastic Map Reduce. That is used for Hadoop. That's basically Hadoop. What they're talking about is Hadoop, which has no reason of being used over here in this case. So that will be my answer, EFS, and that should be okay. The question themselves are not very difficult if you pay a little bit of attention to them. That's it. I mean, just pay attention, and questions themselves are not difficult at all. A client has asked for your advice. They have a huge amount of CSV data currently stored on an on-premise file store. Okay. They have a file store on-premise and they have large amount of CSV data stored. They need to keep the data stored for 5 years and have an occasional need to perform queries on that data. Okay, they might perform queries on the data using SQL. The need isn't commercial; it is for freedom of information reasons. So, client would like to do it with a little investment as possible. The query volume is unknown and ad hoc. What should you suggest? The answer is correct, Abhishek. But for that, I think some of you guys need to be have some understanding of what product Athena is, right? So, I mean, what gives away? Even I have never worked with Athena before in my life, but I basically followed a pattern that I always use to solve any question. Huge amount of CSV data that needs to be stored for around 5 years, right? Okay, data needs to be stored for 5 years. That's great, but it needs to allow you to run SQL queries as well, right? Aurora allows you to do it. HDFS, if you're going to be using some kind of something like Hive on top of that, then it allows you to run SQL queries. But then they're saying that this is not a commercial requirement. You need to make a little investment as possible. Running a Aurora cluster or a EMR cluster is an investment. So these questions are these answers are out of the question in this case because there is no investment. Create a large EBS volume, create an in-situ instance, attach the volumes, load the CS. Again, investment. So based on that, I can simply rule out these three options. There is only one answer left, that is this one, which sounds good as well because we store data. Long-term data is always stored on S3. That's the correct way of storing the data, right? Now, talking about Athena, Athena is basically a serverless service which allows you to perform queries like a data warehouse, a no-ops data warehouse solution, which again we'll talk about once we go into the next sessions of some other services. Which again, all you need to really know is what these services do, because questions might come like this. Like, okay, then you'll be like, what is Athena, right? And having to know like what Athena does, right? That's all you need for the associate exam, even for the professional exam, by the way. We can store on Glacier for S3, which is cheap. Now, Abhishek, to answer that question, if you store it on Glacier, now think about this. When the query volume increases and there are ad hoc requests, Glacier takes some time for you to get the data out as well. That is simply going to increase the cost in those scenarios. Because remember, it might be less storage cost, but data retrieval cost is also charged in terms of other S3 buckets and even Glacier, right? I mean, options are there in S3. Yes, there are options, but since I need to query that data as well out of S3, I will make sure that these sit in standard only. Reason being because I do not want to get charged for data retrieval. But by the way, they do not even talk about any other storage tier like, infrequent access or Glacier or anything like that. So I'll probably, leave it to that, right? You are right in saying that, okay, yes, yes.
Sandeep, if we had an option of intelligent tiering, would that be the best choice?
Which one?
Intelligent tiering, automatically changing between these classes.
Yes, I would still go with the standard. Why? There is a specific reason for that, right? Because with intelligent peering as well, let's say you have 10 different CSV files stored in it, right? Let's say you run a query that is only querying 5 CSV files today. So intelligent peering, what it does, it moves the other 5 files to, cold tier and saves you money, right? Agreed? Next day something comes up and it needs to access all the 10 tables, so intelligent peering will have to charge you based on the access of the data, right? And then it will move that to the hot tier, right? Even in that scenario, there are chances that my cost on intelligent access will go up and I'll be charged for what? Data access. I need to make sure that I am not charged for data access. I just need to be charged for the storage. So S3 standard in this case makes the much more sense, because we are also talking about, because you can see this query volume is unknown and it needs to be ad hoc. So you're not sure which table needs to be, accessed or something like that, right? And you are not sure what queries are users going to be running. Is it going to be accessing 5 tables or CSV formats or 10 tables or all of them? So if you're not sure, the best way to go about it is using S3 standard. Once you have seen the workload where you know that, okay, maybe these tables are not used, then you can manually go and transition those tables. But otherwise, you will always be using S3 standard if you're not, aware of the amount of data that is being accessed from your storage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
It's all about cost. See, it's all about cost. Whenever you're designing a cloud solution, you need to think about 4 pillars: performance, security, availability, which is also reliability, and the final one is performance, security, availability, reliability, and cost, right? So if you build a solution that kind of meets all these pillars, then that's the best solution. You also need to make sure that cost, try, even if the question doesn't talks about cost, right? If there are 4 options and you have narrowed down to 2 different answers, right? Let's say these 2 are correct, both of them are correct. If you have to choose the best answer and maybe cost is the only factor that is making one the answer best over the another, right? You should always go with that one, right? But again, not at the cost of losing reliability or performance, or even the other factors that we talked about, like security. There could be a solution which is very, very less secure and is super inexpensive, but does the question ask for it? First of all, check that, and based on that, you should choose your answer always, right? Moving to the next question. You operate 2 EC2 instances that are running in an auto-scaling group. The instances serve high-resolution mapping images of a group of resource companies. The auto-scaling group can scale out or in to meet the demand of these instances. For 70% of the day, the number of instances is 2, and for 2 to 3 hours per day, the load is 0. But the business cannot tolerate any delay or outages to the data. What option should you suggest to improve the cost effectiveness of this solution? So I'll let you answer, and honestly, I will not move ahead unless you guys answer. I'm not gonna give you the answer for this one. I'm gonna let you decide, because it's a very, very simple question, by the way. Wait for you guys to answer. This is actually pretty simple, by the way. Okay, whenever you're giving your answers, just reply back to me in private so I can tell you if it's correct or not. If it's in the group, I'll not let you know. Kishore, that's incorrect. Brajesh, that's correct. Karanjot, that's incorrect. Vishek, that's correct. All right. So the correct answer is, in this case, D. You're talking about storing something, taking it away from the auto scaling group and storing it on some others, because you also see if you are scaling images over there, we need a scalable solution for storage as well, which S3 is out of the box, is cheaper, it's performance wise also good. So you're also talking about improve the cost effectiveness of the solution. So basically we are talking about, services which can store unstructured data, which is cost effective, which offers great performance and can be accessed from multiple instances, because all I have to do is take a link of the image and post that. Now, again, if you have never seen, how S3 can be really good for applications, let me actually show you. Maybe because that's a piece of puzzle that you guys are not able to solve out so far. How applications can use, AWS S3. This might be a very common thing that not everyone might be aware of. But see, how applications can use AWS S3 is something like this. Interview@gmail.com. And the MFA code. Okay. And okay, I'm logging in now. Great. So what I need to show you is how can I, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a .html and say see. All right. So, I mean, that's probably one of the ways where you will, show your images to the end user by, having those display in a S3 or sorry, HTML page. Now, if I go to S3, this particular bucket that I have some images in there, right? So, if I go to this public assets bucket, which is already turned into public bucket, I have this bucket turned into public, right? I'll go there, I'll pick up one of the images that I have over here, take its URL and go over here. Oops. Click on that and copy the link address, right? And I'll say image source is equal to, and I can simply type in something like this is screenshot number one, and I'll simply type in bold, and then going over there, I'll type in bold over here as well, and I'll simply say save, and that should do it. Now, if I open this page, what you will see is that I have that text plus that image, right? Now, that is how my application is serving my images. Now, think of this laptop as a server, which is, basically having my application, which is as small as this HTML file, right? Now, I'm making use of S3 directly to call this image, which is a public image inside of that. Because again, not all the images or not all the files needs to be public. Do remember that not all the files need to be public. Since this is a website and I actually saw that this file is something that needs to be public, that's why I specifically made it public, right? So do keep that in mind that not everything needs to be public. Just take a look at the question, and if the question demands it, then only you need to provide those as public. Now, as far as this question is concerned, currently running the instances as high resolution mapping images for a group of resource companies. Now, the auto scaling group can out or in, again, it doesn't even talk about anything that is related to public, and it never in the answer ever never says that okay, these images are going to be public, right? So this seems like a very viable answer, right? And if I need to access these images without having to make them public, I can simply use a role for that from the EC2 instances. So you can simply directly call the images inside of the EC2 instance by making use of a role as well, right? So that also makes sense. So this is why I selected D as an answer in this case. You have a large cluster of instances every night to process log files. Depending upon the size of the log file, the processing time is between 3 hours and 5 hours. It is not critical that the process always run on time. Which EC2 pricing model would you use and provide the lower cost? Okay, that's what the question is, and I'll let you decide on the answer. That's correct, Abhishek. Rajesh, that's correct. So if you thought about spot instances, looking at the question which makes spot instances a perfect sense, right? That answer is correct. See, spot instances are designed for something like this, right? Whenever you will get the bid selected, right, you will process it. And again, this is something that is, even if you lose the bid at certain point of time, that's perfectly fine. You can restart, because all we are really talking about is, okay, there is a logs that needs to be processed. It takes 3 to 4 hours, 5 hours to process those logs, right? That's perfectly okay. This is recreatable data. This data can be recreated again. So it's definitely not an issue to recreate this using this spot instances. So that's why I've gone with spot instances. You just created a VPC for security purposes. You're using NACLs and security groups. So we're using both in this case. You launch an EC2 instance in a subnet where you have a set of, where you have set an inbound rule of SSH22 in the security groups, and both inbound and outbound rule for port 22 on the NACL subnet. However, you're not able to SSH into the instance. What is the most likely issue? I'll let you guys answer first. I'm user does not have, that's incorrect, Rajesh. Do remember, we do not use IAM users to connect into an instance. We use SSH key to connect to the user, to the instance.
I was not sure about that. I thought the other three are completely wrong. So that's the reason I chose D.
Okay.
Probably.
That is also wrong. That is also wrong. The D is actually completely wrong.
No, A. I said, oh, somebody else.
No, give it a thought. Give it a thought. That's okay.
Actually, I'm a little bit confused with that ACL and that security group, because one of them is allowing outbound, one of them is not allowing outbound. That is what is the confusion.
Okay. Do you really need outbound rules for the security group?
Actually, as per the question, I think it should work. I don't know why it's not working.
See,
Security group as per what is.
D is definitely incorrect. You have not enabled IPv6 for VPC. That's also obviously incorrect, right? You need an outbound rule allowing SSH for the security group. You do not. Why? Because they are stateful. So if traffic is allowed inbound for SSH, traffic is also allowed outbound for SSH as well. Now going to NACLs. NACLs need an outbound rule for the high FML port range 1024 and 65. That's absolutely correct, right? Because ephemeral ports are basically required for return traffic to the client, right? And that is why, since NACL is stateless, which is why this is recommended, and this is actually not recommended, this is required, which is a by default rule that you will actually see when you go and log in into your portal as well. If you go into your VPC, you will see a rule like this already created, which will be something like all the ports enabled on the high ephemeral port range, right? So this is kind of required. All the other options doesn't even make any sense. You do not need IAM user to SSH. You basically need a SSH key. Obviously, doesn't make sense. And out of these two, this is incorrect, because if a security group rule is allowed inbound, since they are stateful, it is also true for outbound as well, which leaves this one to be the correct answer.
So Sandeep, does that mean that this is actually automatically done, right? We don't do it separately.
Which one?
The option A is automatically done, or we do it manually.
It's done. Either you don't choose to use NACLs, right? That's totally up to you. Or if you want, like the question over here says that, okay, you have made changes to your NACL, right? You can read, you have a set inbound rule SSH in the security group and both inbound and output rules for 22 in the NACL. So you have made changes to the NACL. If you don't make any changes to the NACL, then obviously this option would have not been required. But since changes have been made, you need to make sure that all the changes are made successfully.
Okay, okay. So either we don't do anything or we do everything. Fine. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Sandeep, if you don't mind, could you just show that, I mean, in one of the NACLs, if you already have?
It should be there because a default one is created whenever you create a network. So we're looking for NACLs. Okay, so let's look at this one. See, there is a default rule which allows all traffic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't know if I would be selecting that option. I mean, based on that question, I would still get confused between A and B. I mean, should I go for A or B?
See, B is incorrect. Why is B incorrect? Okay, if I go to security groups, we talked about this, right? Okay, that security
Yeah,
groups are
I understand your point, Sandeep. I'm just saying because A also sounds like the default. So just because you add another
over
rules
here.
for 22,
Read the question. First
yeah.
of all, read the question. The question says that you have modified the defaults. You have made changes to the default. So what we are talking about over here is going in here, editing and removing this first, and then adding a custom rule for port 22. Something like this,
Oh,
and saving it.
okay, okay, okay.
That's what's been done in the question. Right? Which is why the selection A makes much more sense than any other option that's given over here. You're running a web application in your on-premise data center. The application currently has 3 web servers that read traffic using a round-robin DNS. Okay. As a part of your move to AWS, you have been asked to design a solution that uses a load balancer to accept traffic and distribute it to web servers that are not accessible from the internet. Additionally, any database instance should be accessible from the web server. The database instances should not be in the same subnet as the web servers. You've been asked to make a solution highly available using 3 AZs. How many subnets will you require? Okay, I'll let you answer this one. Read the question, take your time. This is kind of, will display your architecture skill set, I would say. If you think that we haven't discussed this, we definitely have. Brijesh says, Brijesh, did you answer B? Which is incorrect. Karanjot says A, which is, I think, also incorrect. I'll probably a part of you have been asked to design a load balancer to set traffic in. Additionally, any database instances should be accessible from web servers. The database instances should not be in the same subnet as the web servers. You've been asked to make the solution highly available. Yes, Kishore, that's correct. You're correct, Kishore. I think the only one who has Abhishek has also answered. Rajesh has also answered correct. So Karamjot, no, that's incorrect. A is not the correct answer. Okay, so Rajesh is correct, Kishore is correct, and then again Abhishek is also correct. Right. Okay. So let me explain this. First of all, how many servers are required? The application has 3 web servers. Additionally, any databases instances should also be accessible from the web servers. The database instances should not be in the same servers. You've been asked to make the solution highly available using 3 AZs. How many subnets will you require? Right. Okay. So first of all, how do I actually demonstrate this? Okay. So what we are required is we need at least 3 AZs. Right. There are 3 web servers. And since we are looking for high availability across 3 AZs, we'll require 3 DB servers as well, right? One would be, your read write, and the other 2 will be your failover and read replica, something like that. So you have a high availability scenario, right? So the first web server will sit in subnet 1 in AZ1, one subnet AZ1, then a second subnet, again, public subnet in AZ2, third subnet in AZ3, right? This is for web servers. So these are 3 subnets across 3 availability zones, and these are all what? Public. And they have clearly mentioned that your database servers and web servers should not be in the same subnet, which is why for DB servers you will require another set, which will be one subnet for AZ1, one subnet for AZ2, and one subnet for AZ3. So your answer will go to 6 in this case. That's the correct answer. If you choose 3, 6, that's correct. Right. You have been given a requirement for a new deployment in AWS. The deployment needs to operate.
Notepad once.
Sorry?
That notepad once. That explanation. Yeah, fine. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. You've been given a requirement from new deployment in AWS. The deployment needs to operate from 2 AZs with one application tier and option to launch public and private EC2 instances. From the options available, which meets the requirement with the least amount of infrastructure? It's kind of a similar question on what we discussed last. The deployment needs to operate from 2 AZs with one application tier and the option to launch public and private subnets in EC2 instances. Abhishek, sorry. Karanjot, I would request you to review your answer based on what I read. You have been given a requirement for a new deployment. Rajesh says A. The deployment needs to operate. Kishore says A, 2 AZs with one application tier, the option to launch public. So public and private. You need to have 2 types of subnets, public and private. And how many availability zones? 2. 2 into 2, 4 subnets. You require 4 subnets to make sure, right? And again, all of that can be put into one VPC. So A is the correct answer. Right? Now, why C is incorrect in this case? C is obviously incorrect, obviously, because why? C is incorrect because we are talking about, okay, one VPC, two subnets. So that would be public and private. Done. But what about two availability zones? We are not talking about two availability zones in this scenario. So we need to make sure that we cater to availability zones as well, which is why we need to have two public, two private, one in one availability zone each, which is why this is correct. Why B is incorrect? B is incorrect because this will require me to have what? Peering as well before these subnets can talk to each other. That's why B is incorrect. And obviously D doesn't even make sense. Kanjo says, okay, one availability. Yes, AWS availability zones of AWS VPC subnets scale only one availability zone. They do not scale beyond one availability zone, Kanjo. If I go back over here and let me show you, if I go to subnets, create subnet, you will be asked to pick up our availability zone when creating a subnetwork. Subnetworks are just within an availability zone. They do not scale an entire region inside of AWS. Something to keep in mind. We do not have regional subnets inside of AWS. Do remember that. That's very, very important. Right. A medical system that is used within 40 major hospitals requires 100% resilience. It's 100% SLA kind of a thing. The service requires 6 EC2 instances to be running at all times to function correctly and should be able to tolerate failure of one availability zone without any performance impact. Which of the following options are valid given this scenario? There are two answers to this problem, Abhishek. Seems like both the options that you have selected are correct. Yes, seems like they're correct. The system requires to be running at all times to correctly and should be able to tolerate the failure of one AZ without any performance impact. So the maximum failure it should be able to tolerate is across one AZ, right? So obviously 6 0 instances, 2 instances, 4 instances, that's 12 instances. Minimum that we require is 6 instances. So that's, it might seem correct if one of the availability zones goes down, we still have full availability, but that's 12 instances. 2 2 2, if one of the availability goes down, we still have 4 instances running. Okay, need to make sure service requires 6 is, oh okay, this is incorrect. B is incorrect, because if one of the availability goes down, we have only 4 instances running. We need to make sure that we at least have 6 running. So this is incorrect, right? This one, if this goes down, we have 6 running. If this goes down, we have more than 6 running. If this goes down, we have more than 6 running. So A could be an option, right? If B is down, again, we don't have any. We have 12 instances. If A goes down, we have still 6 running. 2 goes down, we have 10 running. This goes down, we have 8 running. So A could be an option. B is out of question in this case. 3 3 3. 1 goes down, we have 9 instances running. Second goes down, we have again 9 instances running. C goes down, we have again 9 instances running. D goes down, we have again 9 instances running. This goes down, we have only 4 instances running. So A and C are the correct answer in this case, right? Because we need to make sure that there are at least 6 instances running at all times, even if one of the availability zone goes down, right? So A and C makes much more sense in this case. See, the questions are not very difficult. You just have to pay a little bit of attention. If you start paying a little bit of attention, reading the question correctly and the options carefully, everything is, manageable, at least for the associate exam. You're running a WordPress instance in a non-default VPC public subnet as a part of, and if you think that I have taken this practice exam before, this is the first time attempting this practice exam because it's been like 3 years since I've given the associate exam now. Because I'm doing, I mean, next year I have to review my professional. Actually, it's been 5 years since I did the associate exam. So I'm checking out this Linux Academy course at least after 4 or 4.5 years or 5 years, something like that, right? So this practice exam is totally new to me as well. So I'm doing it with you as well. So it's not that, I've already done this, so I know the answers. I have not done this practice exams in like 4 or 5 years, and it's totally changed. I don't even recognize a single question that I did 5 years ago, right? So, I mean, it's totally new to me as well, and I'm simply reading the questions and the answers and then going, with the correct answer. So, I mean, that's the thing I'm trying to tell you is that just read carefully and it will all make sense. You're running a WordPress instance in a non-default VPC public subnet. As a part of A/B testing, you're deployed another instance in the same subnet. A WordPress instance in a non-default VPC public subnet. Okay. As a part of, you've deployed another instance in the same subnet using the same security group, same AMI, and the instance on the same family. After provisioning the instance, you cannot access it. Which is the following actions you must assess in troubleshooting the issue? A non-default VPC's public subnet. So it's already a public subnet. As a part of A/B testing, you are deployed another instance in the same subnet using the same security group, same AMI, and an instance of the same family. After provisioning the instance, you cannot access it. Which of the following actions? So I believe, now this could have been an answer, by the way, add a route to the new instance, but again, why I specifically, because they're not talking about if the instance has public access or not, if there is a route to take it to the internet gateway, right? But why I ruled this one out, first of all, add a route to the new instance. The statement is incorrect. Had the statement be add a route to the subnet, I would have, maybe inclined to take that answer first, right? But they are saying add a route to the new instance. There is no way you can add a route to the instance. Routes are always added to a subnet, so that's incorrect. Configure a NAT gateway to route traffic to the new instance. D. Someone did answer D, by the way, right? How is D incorrect? D is totally incorrect because that's not what NAT gateways are used for. You cannot get into a VPC. You cannot get into a VPC using NAT gateway. NAT gateways is only for private machines inside your subnet to go and talk to the internet. But you cannot go from outside world to your instance using a NAT gateway. So that's incorrect. B is incorrect. D is incorrect. Create an elastic IP is assigned to the new instance. Okay, might be an option. Make sure the public IP is configured. That's as simple as that. And that's I just need to make sure that there's a public IP so I can connect to that instance. That's it. Elastic IP is also the same thing, but it's an extra effort. I would have to configure this and assign it to the IP, assign it to the machine, which is an extra effort. Both are correct. See, A and C are correct.
Sandeep,
C is a bit.
can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
We can't do the C, right? I mean, how can you configure a public IP inside the operating system? I feel A should be the right one. No?
Oh yeah. Instance OS configured on the instance. Make sure the public IP is configured. C is incorrect. Yep. C, A is the correct answer. Yes, on the instance OS. Yep, you're correct. You're correct in saying that. I thought this was like I didn't read the statement very carefully. The public IP is always attached to each instance, not
When I
to an
saw that
OS.
option, that was when it's right.
Yes. So A is the correct answer. Yes. right? So yeah, I would have I didn't read it very correctly. So A is the correct answer. This is yes, right? So you company has distributed workforce, 60% of the based in United States, 30% in Europe, and 10% in Europe, Asia. All workers upload videos and images based data into S3 based on US East 1. Users in Europe, Asia has been experiencing. Who corrected me, by the way?
Rajesh.
Rajesh. Okay, great. Rajesh, that clearly signifies that you have started to read the statements very carefully, right? So very easily mistakes can be made while reading these statements in the question because of exam pressure or whatever reason, right? So one of the very simple methodology of passing a AWS exam is, or any exam as a matter of fact, is read the statements carefully, right? So one thing that you have tried to achieve, one thing that you have definitely achieved during this session is you're reading the statements very carefully, which is why you were able to correct me, which is great, right? So keep that up. Reason why? Because it is very important that you read the statements carefully, because most of the statements are, sometimes the statements are exact copy of each other and there is only one word that changes in the exam. You'll see that there is, okay, I'll use multiple S3 buckets, exactly same statement will be D statement, and there'll be just one word that will change, right? So read the statements very carefully. It's very important, and great job on reading the statement carefully and correcting as well. So your company has distributed a workforce, 60% are based in United States, 13 Europe, and 10% in Asia. All workers upload videos, images based on surveys on S3 bucket into US East. Users in Asia have been experiencing performance issues. You would suggest to improve the experience of all workers. First of all, there is no thing as use S3 global buckets. That's incorrect. Use S3 acceleration and bucket located in US Central. That's incorrect because our prime focus was US East 1. Use local buckets and use cross-region replication. Have remote workers upload objects to the bucket closest to them. It seems like a very good option, but that will increase my cost a lot because of cross-region replication itself, right? So that's why so I wasn't sure if storage acceleration is now a part of S3 transfer acceleration is a part of the exam or not, which I can clearly see it is, right? So I'll cover this later when we start the sessions. I'll cover storage exploration later, right? But the answer in this case is D. Basically, what it really does, it gets that file uploaded. I basically wanted to cover this with CloudFront. Whenever CloudFront will be covered, I'll cover this across that as well. What it really does, it gives you edge points where when you upload your data, it is uploaded closer to you, and in the background AWS will sync it to your bucket, right? So it will basically give you your bucket endpoints closer to you where you can get your data uploaded, and in the background AWS will get that data back to your bucket, right? That's what S3 transfer acceleration does. In this case, the correct answer is S3 transfer acceleration.
One doubt,
But
Yes.
in option C, when you enable this CRR,
Yes.
do you have something like a source and a target, or if you upload to any bucket, would it get replicated to all the other buckets, or do you have a clearly source and
No.
target? How?
There is a source and target. You specify that. We did saw that in S3 section. So if I go to S3, first you need to enable versioning. And
Then
after
C
version,
would be incorrect, no?
how it is incorrect? you can just have like here to here. Sorry, they are saying that everything needs to be here, right? So this could be source and this could be destination. This could be source and this could be destination, right? And this could be source, this could be destination, this could be source, this could be destination as well. So you can find a way. It will be very complex to do it, but you can use each of them as a source and destination and have like 6 different CRR configured to get everything go across, which is why D makes much more sense. C can be used.
Okay.
It can be used, but it's not the best option in this case. Right, so I'll go with the next one.
I think somebody else also had a question.
Yep, go ahead.
No, that was answered. Means actually we have to see the best answer, right? C was also there, but since it needs to be that 6 more things which we need to do, so it will be better to go. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. You're attempting to resolve a cause of DB performance issue on an application that uses Aurora. Which of the following options are options for review or fixing performance concerns with Aurora? I believe I've already discussed this with you guys. We already discussed this yesterday as well, so I won't go into more details of this, why I chose this answers. Of course, if it's storage performance increases based on that, you can have read replicas if the performance issues are read related, right? So that's what I'll choose in this case, right? And then going to the next question. You're reviewing an existing VPN between a data center and AWS VPC. Your client has asked you to suggest any HA improvements, high availability. HA stands for high availability improvements. The system must be able to tolerate the failure of an AWS AZ and a customer internet connection or router. Currently, the system includes one VPC, one business location with 2 internet connections with each with a router, one VPN connection using one virtual private gateway and 2 IPsec tunnels on the customer routers. Which option should be the most appropriate to get high availability? Now the question is, first of all, you need to realize that do you need to make any changes at the AWS level or at the customer level? That's the most important thing that you need to first of all figure out. Is there a change that needs to be forced at the customer level or at the AWS level? Guys, waiting for your answer. When you create a AWS VPN connection, AWS by default create 2 tunnels for you, right? Which is already given to you. 2 IPsec tunnels are given. The thing is that customer has only one connection configured to this tunnel. If you read the question carefully, there are 2 IPsec tunnels on the AWS side, whereas customer only has one connection configured. They're also saying that you must be able to tolerate customer internet connection. Currently the system includes, now the business location has 2 internet connections already. Now this is something that I already have discussed with you. The customer already has 2 internet connection, each with the router. All you have to do is you need to make sure that both routers use separate internet connection and are connected to these 2 tunnels, which means your answer in this case will be add an additional virtual private gateway. That's obviously incorrect. Why? Because again, it's already there, so I do not have to do that. Add another VPN connection to second CGW. That's absolutely incorrect, because one VPN connection has 2 tunnels. All I have to do is move one of the IPsec tunnels to the other customer router. That's it. I just need to make sure that one of my tunnels that I have inside of AWS can connect to the other router on a separate internet connection, and that's it. That's why B is the correct answer. No VPN connection in AWS already create 2 tunnels, right? Customer has 1 tunnel already configured. The other tunnel sits on a separate internet connection. I just need to configure it. That's it. And that's why B is the correct answer. You do not need to add another VPN connection. A VPN connection already gives you a high availability setup, which gives you 2 tunnels. So you already are getting 2 tunnels when you create a VPN connection. You do not need to do anything extra. No other VPN connection is required. No other gateway is required. You just need to make settings for high availability. You need to make sure customer can give you a similar setup as well, where you get 2 tunnels, which they already have 2 internet connections with each router. So all you have to do is extend those routers to connect to these 2 tunnels. That's it. Which of the following suggestions could help reduce DynamoDB running cost? Again, I will not go into this one because we haven't used this. You're architecting a solution for developers are creating, you need to allow logins to application for those logins to access AWS resources. The application will start with 3,000 users, but also reach 1,000 users within 12 months. The resource, what resource access method should you use? Now, I did discuss this briefly yesterday. So if you're paying attention, someone asked a question related to STS. So we did discuss this briefly yesterday. Okay, Abhishek says D. Kanjo says D. Jay says nothing. Okay. First of all, the application should use AWS APIs to create an IAM user for every application users. Oh my God, like how many users are there? Like the 10 lakh users. So I'll be creating 10 lakh IAM users? Incorrect. The application should be using IAM to incorrect. See, both exactly look the same. There's only one difference. Use long-term credentials, use short-term credentials. That's the only difference between the two. This is what I was talking about. Reading it carefully. Wrong. Wrong. Configure the AWS services using resource policies to accept incoming credentials from identities or Google credentials. Use Google IDP to verify these credentials. I didn't even discuss anything like that. Create an IAM role that trusts an external IDP. Provide this role with permissions for the AWS services. If I go to IAM, how does Google IDP get you access inside of AWS? Only service that allows you access inside of AWS is the IAM role. Roles, create role, web identity, what kind of provider, anything, Google. So the only way you are getting access to AWS service is through a role, right? There is no other way. A Google IDP maybe verifies that those credentials, but how does it get you access to AWS? There is no way for it to do that. The only way it can get that done is by using a role, right? That is why B is the only correct answer. You have been asked to implement a private connection between a client premises and the AWS VPC they are using. The connection must be active within 3 weeks. The customer router has support for BGP, IPsec, and IPv4. What option should you suggest? Yes, Karamjot, that's correct. That's absolutely correct. Oh, 1 second. 1 second. Been asked to implement a private connection between client premises and the connection must be active within 3 weeks. The customer has a router that supports. Now you do need this for that. I would have also gone for C in this case because it's a private connection that they're asking from premises to AWS. VPN also sounds good, but I would still the router that supports BGP, IPsec, and IPv4. I would also go with C in this case, by the way. So I'll just select C. So let's look at that later. You have an EC2 instance that currently runs 100 Python-based admin scripts for a business IT team. The script interacts with other AWS using a role, right? 100 Python-based admin scripts. The scripts run hourly and take around 2 or 3 minutes to run. The business has asked you for suggestions on cost optimization of this scenario. The instance has been running for 1 year and has 2 years of a reserved instance term left. What options should you suggest? Two answers, Karamja. D is correct. D is correct. There needs to be one more answer. Yes, that's correct, Karamja. B and D are correct. Terminate the EC2 instances to avoid cost. That's absolutely incorrect. Why? Because obviously, if you delete a reserved instance, you'll still be charged for it. We already discussed that. Migrate the scripts to chef recipe and use offwork. Scripts are in Python, and Python does not work with chef, so it will be a separate recipe that you'll have to write. So we basically need to use the same scripts that we've been using earlier, like Python scripts. So DE is also incorrect. Yes, you can sell the scripts. You can sell the instances in marketplace. Uh, so that's totally there. So yeah, D is correct. Migrate the scripts to a serverless environment like Lambda functions. So Lambda does support Python. So that's correct. Run a script from Elastic Beanstalk environment within the same application. That will still spin up the same instances and have them running throughout the time. So there'll be no change in the cost in this scenario as well. So that's why B and D seems like the perfect choices in this case. You've been asked to design modifications to an existing application deployed into EC2 using auto scaling group. You've been asked to design modifications to an existing application. Okay, your client needs to make sure that data can be obtained from EC2 instances for compliance reasons. They need CPU usage, network data transfer levels, and memory available. What should you do? So this basically talks about monitoring, right? You probably will not know this answer. So let me tell you, by default, all of the instance monitoring goes into CloudWatch. Monitoring stuff all goes into CloudWatch. CloudWatch by default only monitors CPU usage, network usage, and IO usage. That's your data IO usage, like EBS volumes, the IO usage, right? So only these three things are. Memory usage is by default not monitored by CloudWatch, right? So B is incorrect. Memory usage is by default not monitored by CloudWatch, right? So data is accessible using CloudWatch, but detailed monitoring required. Detailed monitoring only changes the time the data is collected and stored into CloudWatch. So that's incorrect. Memory still won't go into there. Data is accessible using CloudWatch if the agent is installed. That seems correct. Yes, but for memory, you will require an agent for sure. Data is accessible by using default by CloudWatch. No, memory by default doesn't go there. So data will be accessed using CloudWatch, but for memory available usage, CloudWatch logs should be used. Not correct, because CloudWatch logs doesn't, collect data for memory. The only way memory data will be collected is by using an agent, right? So C is the correct answer in this case. Logs doesn't keep the track of the memory information. Memory is a metric, right? So it won't go into the log. So when I talk about a metric, what is a metric? So if I go to something like, right? So if I go to performance monitor over here, now this is a metric, right? This basically is a metric, right? Now a log, something like this, if I go to event viewer, this is a log, right? Now, if I'm looking for memory, specifically related to memory, right? The only way I can find a memory related information is, let me see. So that's it's clear, because this will also aid us when we go into CloudWatch, when we discuss that CloudWatch specifics. Is memory MN, right? Memory, right? So if I say what I'm really interested in is committed bytes in years, okay, and say okay, right? So as you can see, this is my memory usage right now. How much memory is being consumed on my laptop, right? So that's the information that I'm getting from based on how much memory is being used. Almost 50% is being utilized, right? This is the metric. Now a log cannot represent this, right? Which is where, if I go back to our question, the question says use logs to collect metrics. You cannot collect metrics using a log. A log will only collect information like something failed, right? There was a service that event that have happened, something like that. Okay, looking for errors, something like this. The error occurred, something like this. This is what logs are used for. So if the question would have been like, okay, I have a MySQL instance and I want to make sure that the MySQL instance logs are also published in CloudWatch, that's where the answer would have been A. Use CloudWatch logs for that, right? Then the answer would have been A. If you're looking to gather logs or Windows logs or Linux logs, something like that, right? Going to the next question. You've been asked to implement a personal S3 storage area for every staff member within a client. Personal storage, S3 storage, every staff member. There are 3,000 staff members and each requires access to an area no other staff member can access. What option is the both possible and is the least amount of admin overhead to implement and manage? Okay, let's wait for your answer. Whosoever thought that, okay, 1,000 buckets are required, that's incorrect. You can't even go ahead and create 1,000 buckets. That's not even allowed inside of AWS until unless you go and open a case with them, right? So whosoever thought 1,000 buckets are required, that's incorrect. What's really required is something like this. Okay, let's take this bucket for an example. Create folder like a prefix, Sandeep. When they said prefixes, they basically are referring to these folders that I'm creating. Say, create folder, Varan, save, right? So I'm basically giving these users what? I'm basically giving these users what? I'm giving these users a folder, right? So basically, anything that says create an S3 bucket for each staff member is incorrect. Create a single S3 bucket. So C and D seems correct. Give each staff member a prefix in the bucket. A prefix is what? A folder that we just saw. Create a single managed policy using variables, apply it to a group, and add each staff member to the group. And apply to every staff. Now, what I can do is inside the policy, I can simply specify something like, okay, based on variable that, remember we did a policy, something like this, where only if a username's matches, if I go to policies and go to customer managed policies, over here, if I go to custom MFA enforcer, right? So if I look at this particular policy that I created the other day and go to JSON editor, you'll see that I added something called something like this, AWS username, right? So what you can do is something like when you specify the resource name, you can say S3, right? And instead of star over here, what you can specify is something like this, where you're saying if the username matches, then only the user will have access. So what you're trying to specify is you're trying to specify a prefix to match a user's name, and based on that, that user will have access, right? That is what we're trying to do. That's why I'm going to go with the C answer in this case. Right? The question is a little bit more complex than what we have discussed, right? That's why I gave you a good example of what I'm trying to do, so that you have a clear understanding of how to assign this. We already discussed the concepts in some other pattern using another JSON policy, but just to give you a clear example of what I'm trying to do with this explanation. You're conducting an architecture review. A client has around 100 TB of important data stored on objects on S3 using standard storage class. You have asked, they have asked you to either confirm the solution is resilient to an AZ failure or to suggest what should be done to ensure it can tolerate as AZ failures with no data loss. What should you advise? So I'll leave this answer question for you guys to answer. Take a look and put your answers in the chat. I'll be back. I'll just get some water and I'll be back. All right. So whosoever thinks the answer is A is absolutely correct, because S3 by default stores data across multiple availability zones, so nothing else is required. A medical imaging company generates around 300 GB of data, important data, on weekly basis, and stores this in S3. They need to ensure that using resources in the most cost-effective way possible. Data is stored in S3 standard and tends to be accessed frequently in real time in first 30 days. After the scan takes place, and then rarely is ever after that. The company needs to keep the data for 7 years for regulatory reasons. What option should you suggest? Okay, let's look at the answers. Kishore, that's correct, Kishore. That's absolutely correct. Rajesh, that's correct. So if you're thinking about storing all the data in S3 standard and then using lifecycle rules to, gradually move it to IA and Glacier, and thinking about A as the answer, that's correct. Why? Because for first 30 days it is used, it is scanned. After that, it is rarely used, and you need to save it for 7 years as well, right? So if maybe 7 years will throw you off, and you will directly go and pick up Glacier and forget about this 30 days period where the data is used in real time. That's where you will not select A, which will be wrong, because think of this 30 days period as well, and then you need to save it for 7 days. Life cycle rules allows you to do that as well, right? So A is the correct answer in this case. Right. You're reviewing a set of API endpoints on your development team that currently runs a fleet of 50 EC2 instances. You've been asked to reduce the cost. Are there any pairs of AWS products or features you could suggest to reduce the cost of the current solution? See, the answer to this one, you probably will not be able to answer right now. The answer is Lambda and API Gateway. You're doing a So probably you won't be able to answer this question. So I'll leave this for now, because we haven't discussed the stuff yet. The CEO is reviewing expected technical effort required to manage an AWS environment. Which of the services allow SSH connectivity into the underlying instances? So you need to basically connect to using SSH to these instances that you create. We've already discussed this. EC2 allows you to do it. RDS doesn't. DynamoDB doesn't. EMR also, because it creates EC2 instances for its usage, so it does. So EMR is something that will require this as well. DynamoDB and RDS doesn't have any SSH. Client applications runs 15 EC2 instances, all using EBS volumes for operating system. Okay, each has 1 TB IO, 1 EBS volume for data storage. Application needs to be able to read or write 2500 times per second on the data volume. The client believes the platform running costs are more than that they need to be. What should you tell the client? This is actually a very good question. We've all discussed this, by the way. When I was discussing about EBS volumes, we've already discussed this. Come on, guys. So we discussed this, that IO1 is super expensive, right? So that is the same problem that their client is facing right now. You need how much IOPS? 2500 IOPS. 2500 IOPS, right? So 1 TB will give you how many IOPS on GP2, right? On GP2, these many number of IOPS can be achieved with, with 1 TB storage, you will get 3000 IOPS approximately, even more than that, somewhere around 3072 IOPS, right? That's what you will get. So you're getting more than that, and the cost will significantly decrease if you go from IO1 to GP2, which we already discussed the other day. I showed you an example of that as well, right? So if you thought about A being the correct answer, that's absolutely correct. You will get the number of IOPS, actually more than the number of IOPS with the amount of storage, plus the cost will significantly reduce from IO1 to going to GP2 as well. So A is the correct answer in this case. You're architecting a web application that runs on EC2 instances. The application is stateless and store its session state with DynamoDB. You want to ensure that the application can scale as quickly as possible to increasing and decreasing the demand in cost-effective way. What option should you choose? Yes, B is obviously an answer. What else? Obviously, with small instances, it will make much more sense. So yeah, this is basically a very standard auto scaling procedure that we discussed the other day. You're designing the storage needs, and we'll do maybe 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up the question session, because I don't want to go through the entire practice exam. I'll leave something like this for you once you have completed the entire course again. You are designing a solution that needs for a movie processing application. Large videos are uploaded to your website and stored on S3. Elastic Transcode processes this master copies into multiple formats and stores them on S3. The master copies can be used directly up to a year and sometimes less. There are over 20 size and a bitrate variations of each master movie file. 90% of your website users only use these size variants. Storage costs are increasing rapidly, and you're asked to optimize the running costs. What should you do? Okay, so basically we're talking about trying to reduce the storage cost. Store the master video files on Glacier immediately and resized versions on S3. Okay. Store the master video files on infrequent access and migrate them to Glacier after 12 months. Store the popular resized version of S3 standard. Okay, store the master. Okay, so basically, if you think about this, the master video files that we have, that is something that is used to recreate some other files, right? So they're saying large videos are uploaded to your website and stored on S3, processes these master copies into multiple formats and stores them in S3. The master copies can be used directly up to a year, sometimes less, right? It can be used directly up to a year or less. Then they are saying there are over 20 size and bit variations of each master. 90% of your website users only uses 2 of these size variants. Storage costs are increasing rapidly. How do you reduce it? So first of all, Glacier is obviously incorrect because you use those files as well. This one is also incorrect because standard one zone IGA gives you very less availability and durability, right? So that's obviously incorrect. Store the master files in IA, which gives you the same durability across all platforms, which is 99.999999, which is 11.9's durability. Migrate them to Glacier after 12 months, correct? Store the popular resized version of S3 standard on S3 standard and the less popular resized version on S3 one zone IO. This seems correct. Why store the less popular resized version on one zone IO? What if the one zone IO, maybe one of the availability zone goes down? If the data is lost, what in that case? That's fine. Master file can be reused to recreate the same least used popular version, right? That's why it is correct. We can have an event which will be triggered. Remember, we discussed about an event. Whenever availability zone goes down, new files can be created from the master file. So these files are regeneratable files, which is why they'll be stored on zone 1 IA. That is why I'm going to go with C option. Next. Over 10 lakh objects are stored in S3 during using S3 IA in the US East 1 region. You need to ensure the data will be even secure. If any AZ fails entirely, what changes should you make? Obviously, we've discussed this, no changes required. You have a multi-AZ RDS instance. It primarily AZ zone is 1A and the secondary zone is B. Which of the following events will cause a failover from primary to secondary? Secondary is B, primary is A. Which of the events will cause a failure? RDS OS patching in US East B. First of all, they need to patch the secondary. When they are patching secondary, they need to fail over. A is incorrect. So whosoever answered A is absolutely incorrect. Performance issues in region A. Now, performance reason is something that you need to maybe troubleshoot. Why the performance issue is occurring? Because if there is a performance issue that may be related to a query and your data always remain the same even across failover. So that issue will always occur on the secondary instance as well, right? When they're talking about performance alarms, they're talking about performance issues of the database, not about the performance issues of the availability zone, right? This is database related, right? So obviously this is also incorrect. So A and E are absolutely incorrect. Now, if there is a storage failure in B, that's obviously will not trigger a failover. Why? Because the primary is A. If there is no issues on A, it will keep on running. Why would it try and trigger a failover when there is a storage issues with B, right? Obviously that is incorrect as well. Failure of 1A. If the primary region goes down, then it should move to secondary. That seems like a pretty valid option. So C. Storage failure in A. If storage fails in A, the database will go down, which also causes a failover, which is why C and D seems like the best options in this case. Right. Doing a last one. Which the following are not a global AWS service? Which of these services are not global? Obviously, A is not. DynamoDB is again not. The third answer is actually, I'm going to go with S3. Why? Because the S3 portal itself is global. So if I go to S3, S3 is a service that is available globally, right? But if you talk about individual buckets, those buckets are not global. The buckets are specific to a single region. If I go to this bucket, you will see that they are specific to a single region, which is why I would go with EC2 S3 in DynamoDB, right? Whereas Route 53 and IAM has nothing region specific, right? So that's what my answers will be in this case.
Can you go back to the bucket once again? Yeah, thank you.
Right? So I'll basically leave it to this, and I'll basically cancel this challenge. Click to confirm, right? So we discussed a good amount of questions, to be honest, and we did see that some of the things that we do need to cover in the future as well, so that you have a complete understanding of the entire platform. And then there was at least a good amount of 25 or 23, 24 questions, which was something that we've already covered, right? Like I said, core services is a major part of the exam, and you will see at least 30 to 40 questions just based on the core services. And even out of the 30 questions that we discussed, there was around 23 to 24 questions which was just based on core services, right? And you already know how much you answered correctly. So if you answered most of them correctly, then that gives you a very good idea of your current standing, on where do you stand in respect to the preparation of for the exam, and as far as the understanding of the platform in AWS goes, right? So I'll give you more practice tests, once we move along, once we've discussed everything, right? And a parting practice exam as well on the very last day of our session, right? Hopefully, if I can find that, which will be a very near replica of your exam as well. So yeah, that will help you pass your exam at least, right? But again, I would not recommend you to use that, right? Again, this is something that's very specific. I do not use exam dumps whatsoever in any of the exams, unless there is a very specific need that I have to clear this exam, or I will not get paid or something like that, right? So I'll only use it in that scenarios. Otherwise, all the exams that I give are without dumps. Even if I fail, that's perfectly okay. I can redo the exam, right? Because with exam dumps, you'll probably never learn anything, right? So I do not encourage you to use them, and I normally don't even give them. So that is why I won't be giving you any dumps. I'll be giving you very near replicas of the exam itself, which will be like replica exam, practice exam, something like that, right? So I'll try and share those with you guys for the exam on the last day as well. Of course, you'll find a lot of those on Udemy, on Pluralsight, and on Linux Academy, which will definitely help you throughout the way, right? And yeah, I mean, that's one of the ways that you'll get prepared for the exam. And you already know your current standings on how you did and how much you have understood so far, and how much you need to improve on which particular service, right? So what I can recommend from here on now is that you already know which part is lagging. Let's say some of the VPC questions were not clear, some of the VPN questions were not clear, some of the S3 questions were not clear. Rewatch the recording, right? And rewatch the Pluralsight or Udemy courses, whichever you have opted for, right? And see how much you can improve. The first time I was reviewing AWS, I had to do the entire course twice. It's not that I cannot understand something in one go. I can, but every time you watch it twice or second time, there'll be words, there'll be specific things that you would have missed, and you will, gather those in the second attempt, right? So second time is always a charm. So that's what I would recommend as well, right? I won't go into any more practice exams. If you have any questions, you can ask them, right? I will be assigning dates as well. By tomorrow, end of the day, I'll be assigning everyone's date for each and every one session, right? And compiling a list of all the topics that's left and needs to be covered for the exam as well, and assigning dates to when those topics will be covered as well. That will be done maybe tomorrow, maximum by Tuesday. So do look at that sheet and see when is your session, and prepare accordingly. And yeah, that's it. Nothing else that I have to discuss as far as the practice exam goes. But if you have any questions, let me know. And yeah.
Sandeep, how do we get access to this Linux Academy?
Just go and get started for free. That's it.
Okay.
You will be able to create a free account that would be valid for a certain amount of days, and use that, which should be more than enough to get you started.
Okay. Thank you.
Right? I think it gives you a week's full access for free. So whenever you're ready, you can start the access and use it. Until then, I would recommend that you use Udemy or Pluralsight.
Okay.
Pro site is also free till April. So until the entire April, it's going to be free. I've been, mentioning this multiple times. If you still haven't signed up, do sign up. It's not going to hurt watching a course twice or at least 3 times, definitely, right? Because again, like I said, no knowledge is going to be bad knowledge. So I would recommend that you sign up for all 3 resources based on your time and review them. It's simply going to strengthen your skill set.
Yeah, hi Sandeep.
Yep.
Sandeep, yesterday I talked about that RDS instance, right? So yesterday, once again, I did. Still, it was not doing what I'm telling you what I did was I'm using the default VPC and default internet gateway and the default route table which is there. So I'm able to connect to the ACQ instance, right? Because it is on public IP, and that is what
Right.
is I'm on that putty using that SSH, right? That
Can
Linux.
you share your environment in your screen if you have it?
I've deleted my RDS instance because actually the RDS itself takes a lot of time, maybe half an hour to 1 hour. It will just keep on moving and moving. So I
Can you
just want to
do?
know what. Yeah.
See, there must be an issue with your security groups, or the way you're connecting to the instance. That's the only thing that I can think of that's causing the issue, right? What I can recommend is that next time, whenever we have a class, right, before we start, so before coming to the class, prepare your environment,
Oh,
whatever you're
I did.
doing.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do
Yeah, and we'll have this conversation where I'll live troubleshoot it with you, so that you basically can get access.
that. Yeah.
Because
Thank
there's
you.
no point me showing it, because I'll show it, then you'll basically come into the same problem again when you try and do
Yeah.
it. So it's
What
better
you
about
said,
your environment.
Sandeep, that should we create your own VPC and own internet gateway and then route table, or the default one I think is allowing the public access. I'm actually trying for everything on public, so I think that should work, right?
It should work, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll do that next time. Yeah.
Yeah. Just whenever you're ready, next time whenever we have a class which is on next Saturday, come prepared with your environment and we'll troubleshoot. Right. Okay. Just let me, confirm who has a class on Saturday, Sunday for sure. Let me, actually we have time, so I'll just allocate the dates now. Okay, so the class is on 25th. Right. So you've been assigned dates to your topics now, and everyone should have their dates specifically assigned, right? And right. And whenever we have times in those sessions left, I'll discuss my sessions, which consist of EMR as well. EMR, no one's been assigned, right? Okay. So these are topics that I'll take care of whenever we get time out of your sessions, right? So everyone has a date assigned to the topic and a topic assigned to them. So be prepared for your topics, and we'll discuss them based on the dates that they have been assigned to you guys. Right. If you have any questions related to your dates assigned or any questions related to what's being discussed when, so I've tried my best that no two topics are covered on one day except for Abhishek, because they are very similar topics. So that's why I've been assigning them the same dates. Right. But apart from that, everyone has been assigned a separate date for each of their topics, right, to make life very easy for you and give you a very good amount of time for preparation and stuff as well. So 29th, we do not have a class on 29th. So that needs to be 8 as well. Okay. So, and that should do it. Right. All right. So everyone has their date assigned, and after you're done using your session, which will take you around 2 hours, maybe on some days, maybe 3 hours on some days, and after you're done, we'll go and take the time left to discuss topics that I want to discuss. Right. So that's it for the day. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, then we'll call it a day, and I'll see you guys on Saturday.
So Sandeep, we'll be getting on the max, let's say 10 to 15 minutes, right? For the presentation.
I think the only topics that require, look, CloudTrail is like a 5 to 10 minutes topic, right? SNS is like 10-15 minutes. SQS is maximum 10 minutes. This topic requires a lot of time. So Sudhanshu's topic will be around 1.5 hour topic.
Also very small, I think. Cloud formation and Lambda, I can finish in 10 minutes to 15 minutes, both.
I think 30 minutes should be more than enough to, with a demonstration. 30 minutes should be suffice for these two topics with the explanation.
Actually, I'll be presenting via one presentation only. I am not going to be with the slides and all. So I'll be showing the practical examples and then explaining that what cloud formation and Lambda is. Like in the Lambda, the AWS itself is giving us the examples. So I'll be showing any examples.
Just use that. Just use that,
Yeah.
but just accompany some theory so that they understand what how Lambda is different.
Definitely. But then that will be on the portal itself, so that I don't want to go into theory as such. The practical part I'll explain orally over that portal, AWS portal.
That's all right. Otherwise, I'll give them a very theoretical overview of what this is, and then you can show the theory part. That's okay. Right?
Fine. Okay.
I do not want you to go into details of theory, because that is available on the site itself. I do not want to spoon feed in everyone over here going through the theory. Theory is something that they can always read through the documentation, but the concept should be clear. The concept should be clear.
I did cloud formation and Lambda means on last week also already. So it was very easy. It's not difficult. Everybody can do it easily.
Yeah, it's super simple unless you're writing something for a production environment.
Yes, that is very specific code in that case. Yeah.
Yes, CloudWatch is 30 minutes maximum, right? Nothing big in CloudWatch. Elastic Cache is 10-15 minutes. EFS is also 10-15 minutes. Redshift is also 10 minutes. VPC endpoints take maybe 20 minutes, something like that. DynamoDB takes 30-40 minutes at least. Egress only gateways is like 10 minutes. Step functions is 5-10 minutes topic. Pre-signed URLs is 5 minutes topic. 10 minutes topic. 10 minutes topic. 10 minutes. This takes 1 hour. This takes 1 hour. Rest, no time limit for me.
Yeah, Sandeep, you need to change the date of step functions.
Okay, you do not. Okay. Let me see. Do you have a topic in mind?
No, step function 29th is the date. You need to change it to 28th.
Oh, okay.
28th will be better.
28th?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Can you please share a link through which you have shared some diagrams in Excel sheet? I am not able to access it. It's the same link that we've been using so far. Let me go and post it again. AWS training. Get shareable link. Control C, and there you go. There you go. You might need to use your Gmail account to connect to this link if you're having issues connecting this to this link. You might need to use a Google account for connecting. So make sure that the link is copied.
Sandeep, can you share that? Okay.
I did. It's in the chat. Did you get it?
Yeah. And can you please change my dates for this demonstration, because I have a training till 24th. I need some time to.
How does that sound? Is that okay? Is that okay now?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay. All right. So that should do it for everyone now. All right. So I think that's all sorted now. The dates are sorted. The extent of topics that you need to know is all sorted. That should give you a very good idea of preparation and everything. Practice exams all sorted. Doubts classes all sorted. Right. So I'll see you guys on Saturday. If you have anything else, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on Saturday.
You, Sandeep. Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
Thanks, Sandeep.
See you, Sandeep. Thank you so much. Bye all.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Bye. I'll see you guys on Saturday. Yeah.
Thank you.